Good evening. Tonight's episode of the Beltway Report is not the episode we had planned for you. Instead, tonight's episode will feature a celebration of life for Undercity Informer. During the 13 years, 3 months, and 18 days that we knew Undercity Informer touched all of our lives. A card that warded deep format knowledge and unparalleled access to your graveyard. We here at the Beltway Report would like to take a moment of silence to honor our dear friend. Entombed next to his friend Nadu, he will be missed. Great, now that's over. It's gone, folks, and hopefully so is Oops. Let's start the show. Welcome to the Beltway Report. It's week 5, and I am joined by the incomparable Mr. Jason Hoffman. Jason, how are we feeling today?
Thanks so much. Still recovering from my shellacking that I took over the weekend at the BCQ. But did have to put my shoes on and go back to work today. But yeah, it's all bright and sunny now in the DMV.
There you go. Did you lose to Oops during that BCQ?
I did not. I wish I had, because at least I would have been able to use the bathroom in between. So
there we go. Yeah, so Oops is gone. For anyone who's been living under a rock today and is just seeing this, today we received a BNR update, and Undercity Informer has been banned. The reign of Oops all spells as the scourge of Moto's leagues is gone, or is it? Jason, what do we think? Is Oops dead?
I don't know. I mean, there's some crazy folks there. I think there's still a powerful shell. We were talking about this a little bit before the show. The first card that came to mind for me was Belcher, as a sort of a sideboard juke that can just slot in 4 of. It still costs 4. I mean, you still need to activate it, so obviously it's not as powerful. There's some folks that we've seen, and apparently in the Discord they're talking about upping the copies of Lively Dirge. Also Beseech the Mirror is an option. So I think obviously whatever happens, you're not going to have that 8 of consistency of the 1 card combo happening. For just being like that cheap of an effect. But there are other versions of this type of effect, so I think it remains to be seen. But I think this isn't the last we've seen of Oops, I will say. And it's one of those decks that it's very represented online. I think we're going to maybe talk about it in a few minutes, like the implications. But it's one of those things where if you kind of sleep on it, I think it could make a comeback. So it was something that we saw in Reanimator too, when the Reanimator was getting the ban hammer like a year ago. It'd be people would shave a couple graveyard hate slots in their sideboard, and then Reanimator would top 8 a bunch of times again until people sort of respected it. So we'll see if that's the same type of pattern, but I have a feeling we haven't seen the true last of it.
Yeah, we've had a lot of those decks over the several years of at least my time playing Legacy and other formats, like an Affinity and Modern always pop back up as soon as people start cutting Stony Silences from their board. They're like, oh, it's no one's played this in a while. Oh, look, Affinity won the GP. Gee, I wonder how that happened. Oh, they went 15-0. Incredible. So all right, let's assume Oops is weaker. Regardless, I mean, I think it's a fair assessment, right? Oops is going to be weaker no matter what they do.
Oh yeah, especially at the start, until people figure out the next best list, right?
Right, like even if they're playing the Chromoxes and they're playing Beseech is great. If they're playing Dirges and Reanimate's great. If they're playing Charbelcher, great, which goes well with Beseech. I don't know what they're gonna do, but like, what do we think does well now that Oops is, at least for now, removed from prominence in the meta?
Yeah, so it's a really tough call. I think your guess is as good as mine. One of the things that first popped into my mind though was that I think it gives a little bit of breathing room to the format, where some of the slightly slower decks, be that maybe like some slightly slower combo, might be able to kind of replace it. Decks that aren't blue. Like I think the worst matchups, if I recall correctly, for these Oops were really like the Force of Will kind of tempo decks, where that would put on a little bit of pressure, have 8 counter spells or 7, 8 counter spells just in the main board to back it up. So now maybe the green decks, maybe the white decks are not kind of losing sleep, knowing that game one they have almost no chance against this because the format has slowed down maybe by a turn or half a turn. So I think it might give some opportunities for some of these like non-blue type of aggro decks to thrive. And those matchups historically are the worst for the blue tempo decks because you're sort of trading all this like anti-card advantage by pitch casting force. You're kind of anti-tempo by removing your land for a daze, and then you just get against these like white weenie decks or other kind of like stompy decks that just don't really care that much. They just have a bunch of redundancy. They don't really care about your counters and things like that. So I think it's one of those things where it's going to have cascading effects on the meta, and I think that remains to be seen exactly what's going to happen. But that would be my initial thought process. We'll see if it's right or wrong, but that there might be some kind of like other colors that are coming out of this that were slightly slower, maybe like a turn or two too slow in the previous meta, that are going to thrive now in this, and we might see tempo struggle a little bit. Right. If it's not fully replaced by just a bunch of other people trying to do combo, in which case Temple will be fine. Temple is always fine with the Daze Shell and Daze Wasteland Shell, but I think they might struggle against these new decks coming out from under the rock here.
Yeah, and the one I immediately thought of was Green White Depths, I think, because it has good matchups into both of the current tempo shells that are very good. It has a good matchup into the black version, and it has a really good matchup into the Izzet version because it just a bolt does not remove Reclaimer, and it certainly doesn't move Knight of the Reliquary.
Right.
But they always got stomped by Oops All Spells, and that kind of is a big point against them.
Yeah.
I do wonder if this is getting removed and people are going to drop down in their graveyard. If Reanimator starts to see a new, we've seen new versions of that. We've seen ones with the TMNT cards, the Mikey card that you have 2 keys, the Shallow Grave. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I've even seen like the blue-black Reanimator trying to make a little bit of a comeback here with Flow State to kind of recoup some of the card disadvantage of like discarding your own cards. Maybe people will try like a Faithless Looting type of like blue, red, black shell or something like that. Again, like when you're not sort of hit when your deck is sort of hit just by happenstance from all the graveyard hate that people are having to pack in their sideboard for Oops, it frees some of those decks a little bit. If people decide, they look at the ban list and they say take out 1 or 2 graveyard hate pieces from their sideboard, I think that's a really good call that those decks are gonna probably see maybe the biggest even like initial upswing.
Now, is there anything else that we think gets worse now that Oops has left the matchup or left the meta because it had such a good matchup into Oops? Like any of the hard combo decks, bad matchups for Oops? Good matchups into Oops.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that. I do recall that like seeing some of the stats that it looked like the tempo decks were sort of like they had the best numbers against Oops. So that's where my eye is kind of gravitating towards. I think that it might be a little bit of a hit to them. The tempo does have the capability to kind of change. We're going to see that later in some of the top 8 lists and everything. I want to talk about some of the card selection choices and stuff there, but tempo does have the ability to sort of adapt with the meta. I think they have a lot of flex slots. So the current versions right now might not be the ones that we're seeing in a few weeks. Even though Tempo might not get any new cards, I think they might change how they're being built going forward because they need to adapt maybe to some of these like decks that you were talking about, like green-white depths, or maybe some like other stompy decks that are kind of beating up on them. So maybe they need a board wipe in the side or something like that. We'll kind of have to see how it goes. But I think it's exciting to have this shake up a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. And, I always love when Legacy gives a nice sudden shakeup that no one expected, a new card or a random ban. Next time I'm going to see some unbans, but,
Yeah,
We'll
it
see.
feels like it's almost like we're Wizards just a little bit behind on what, people are saying on Reddit or people saying in the stores.
Right.
Is like people were kind of calling for this for the last 2 years,
Mhm.
maybe longer, and then just kind of happened out of the blue. I don't think anyone was really expecting the change. I certainly wasn't. So.
No, they talked about it last time. I was like, oh, Wizards
Mm.
isn't listening, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, they obviously don't think oops is a big deal, but I guess they either decided maybe the data was enough, or they just said, all right, we're done listening to people. We're done getting yelled at.
Yeah.
And I did note at the end, they did say, don't buy your $7,000 in Tabernacles, folks, because that Coas deck might be on the chopping block next. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you think
Yeah.
it's a problem? Do you think it actually might go next ban?
I don't know. I also think if they do choose a card, it probably won't be like Candelabra and things like
Right.
that. I think they try generally to like go after the not so expensive cards so that it's just they don't acknowledge the second market, but I think
Right.
they keep it in mind at least.
I think they call it the iconic cards that we
Yes,
try to
they're
avoid.
iconic.
The
Yes, Ryan.
signposts of the format.
Yes, yes, signpost of the
Yes, yes.
staples, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's that shell. I think once people figured out the candelabra build, which I know people were playing it a while back, but it feels like it's been recent that they've sort of gotten this very redundant shell that it's.
Mhm.
I mean, as a tempo player and control player, it's been really hard for me playing against these types of decks because historically, as a tempo, like the rule of thumb was if you're a control deck, you go after the payoff. If you're a tempo deck, you go after the mana producing stuff. But with the candelabras, it's like they have so many options to make
Right.
mana, and then when you have ring, Karn, Forge, like all of these payoffs, it's just redundancy, redundancy,
Mhm.
redundancy. So it's really hard to sort of like thread that needle when you're playing against them and pick the right like axis to go after.
Mhm.
So it's done very well in the top the last Eternal weekends. I think it's won the last one or two. I was trying to look that up before the show, but
Two ago it won. I don't
okay,
remember last year.
yeah.
Who won last year? I think that
But
was
it's always been it's
maybe
been a
last year.
player, and for
Yeah.
sure. And I feel like it's one of those that sort of it's similar, right? Like we were talking about with the hate, right? Like I mean,
Right.
you if people are aware of it, you can pack your sideboard with a bunch of null rods, and you
Right.
can shut it down. If you want to, you can shut it down. We have the tools to do it. But it's when it's in a place where people, it's kind of not in the zeitgeist. People aren't exactly thinking about it top of mind, then it's an extremely powerful deck if people are sleeping on it even just a little bit. So
I think
yeah, I don't know if it's ready to do that. Although didn't the last time they talked about something, it was Oops, and before that what they were talking about was Reanimator, and things
yeah.
have been banned from both of those. So
Yep. So
yeah, maybe
something's
be careful if you're thinking about buying into
right.
it. Consider. I don't know.
Yeah, but
No, not no financial advice here, of course.
right. No, at the same time, if you're buying $7,500 in candelabras,
Yeah.
maybe we're a bit late on that one. All right. Well, speaking of sideboarding tech and choices for the meta, let's talk about a recent meta. We had a BCQ just yesterday at our good friends Dice City Games. You can see that top 8 right there. Look at those smiles as they
See some familiar
endured
faces in there.
absolutely as they endured the scorching heat outside. And then we have Harry and we have Andy. For those watching who know me and Andy, you will understand that side. Andy, great guy. We have them. They split the finals. They both were already qualified. So who gets qualified instead? But our good friend Matt Radford on. I think he was on
Congratulations.
Artifact Stompy. Yeah. So when they
Yeah.
got down, they were the 3 seed. So check that box, folks. Sometimes it just
Hmm.
works out. You don't have to win the event.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome work to all of those folks. I mean, just amazing players, like I said. I mean, there's some familiar faces, people that we see all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, great work.
Now, you and I also went to that BCQ, but you'll notice neither of us were in that top 8 photo.
Correct.
I have a consistent history of that store. I will lose round 1. I will then win round 2 and 3, have hope, and then get crushed in round 4 by someone who eventually makes top 8. Every single time, I'm just like, at this point, I need to stop getting tricked by it. How'd your event go?
Yeah, just to have your head stashed. Yeah, that might be the worst. I lost in a slightly different fashion where I realized I had made like a lethal error in my first 2 rounds, and then was kind of beating myself up a little bit mentally after that. So it was like, I gotta go, get a sandwich or something after this. But
Great chicken nearby.
Eat, so.
So let's take a look at that top 8. We had Harry on Is It Welder Cam, quickly becoming a signature deck of Harry's, and Andy on that blue-white Felia deck that is very popular in the DMV.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at those.
Yeah, do you want to look at those deck lists?
Absolutely. So here's Harry's.
Yeah, so Harry's, I'll say, and yeah, you just jump in with any thoughts you had, but yeah. I know there's effectively like 3 welder cam decks. I was trying to sort of outline the differences in them. I was sitting across from Harry as he was sleeving up his second copy of Tezzeret Cruel Captain, and I got a little bit of a chat with him. I mean, I've had him ultimate at turn 3 against me, and for a fair deck, that is lights out, because you're having to deal with every single 0 mana artifact out of his deck just becomes a threat going forward.
Right.
And if as I'm sure you folks listening, that have played anything fair, like that is just something you cannot outpace. You're going to draw lands at some point, not a removal spell every turn, and you can't deal with that. So I think it's a really cool choice. I don't see Tezzeret in the other players, so that's one of the unique ones. Harry also has opted for 2. Where is it here? Maybe he doesn't have it in this version of the list.
Harry has been iterating through several versions, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
What card were you thinking of that they seem to have cut?
The red man, the one in the red, make a 2/2 every turn basically. What should I call it? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we'll look at some of the other versions, but Harry's a little bit more in on the combo than a couple of the other versions that we have today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, only 4 copies of Pinnacle Emissary, no Kappas, so they weren't on that backup plan. I do want to draw your attention to a couple of the sideboard cards. First off, we were just talking about drawing 4 consigned to memory. Obviously, well prepared for colorless.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that's going to get more and more. And then I haven't seen this one before. I don't know if you have in this deck. Pyrite Spellbomb's back?
Pyrite Spellbomb. Yeah, he was talking to me about that the other day at our locals. I think I'm not I'm not a connoisseur of this deck. You might be able to figure it out more, Ryan. You have that kind of mind, but there's like some infinite or like pseudo infinite you can do in this, I think he was saying. So it might be kind of like a backup piece, as well as a nice colorless removal spell that you can tutor. I think it just has a lot of utility there.
Right. Trying to figure out what you can do that's a combo with this particular piece. I mean, Twin Shot and Legion Extruder are, of course, infinite combos.
Those are, yeah.
That's a very iconic part. You loop them infinitely with Welder and Sewer, but with Pyrite sacrificing itself to deal damage, I'm not.
It might be part of a convoluted sort of where you need a few other pieces out or something.
Yeah, if you're watching right now and you know the answer to that question, drop a comment, post something in Twitch chat. Tell us what we don't know. We'd love to see
I will say it's probably decent in the mirror, where you can just remove one of their Emeries or Goblin Welders or something.
Right, and this deck has a pretty hard time sometimes with Bowmasters, because you end up drawing a lot of cards because you have Bobble for days.
Yep.
In particular, in the Sewer Valence Cam also draws cards and often does when you're doing an infinite combo of some variety. Like you have infinite mana, you just need to draw extra cards. So it's pretty rough with Bowmaster. So extra piece for that.
He must value it as a valuable piece, because I mean I could see it being in the main board just because you can always just sort of cycle it away, but he's got it in the sideboard there, and you can tutor it with Tezzeret, Engineer, and of course with Saga. So if he wants access to it, he's got like many routes to that.
Also, one last comment: 4 Great Furnace. No seats, just 4 Great Furnace. This is a really heavy on the red version of this deck.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's take a look now at Andy's deck. Blue-White Felia, once again, quickly becoming a new staple of the region, similar to how lands used to be. Anything you want to talk about in here? Let's see.
I didn't even realize that. We saw in the show notes that he had 62 cards.
What? 62? No way. Where's the
I don't know if that was on purpose, but we'll have to check with Andy. But I was looking through the deck, and one of the things I have never seen in Legacy, at least in my relatively short time, I suppose, is the spell snare. So maybe those spell snare. What do you think? You think those are the 2 extra cards, Ryan?
I mean, so maybe, but also this is 22 lands. That's a lot of lands.
Yeah, it does feel like a lot of lands.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's more responsibility than I would expect in a tempo player. So maybe that is big,
Yeah,
because they're always shaving that off first before they're shaving some interaction or something. But this deck is a beast. If anyone listening, hasn't had the pleasure to play against it, and be sort of wastelanded and dazed and stifled into oblivion,
because that's
now there's another thing to think about when they have 1 open mana is don't try to cast your 2 mana spells into that either.
Yeah, because all that sounds real fun. Absolutely fantastic. And then going back, speaking of 2 mana spells, Snapcaster Mage making a resurgence because it's been a while.
Yeah, juicy. With all the 1 mana interaction that he has in here, I do like that choice.
Yeah.
Particularly, and like otherwise there's no real sort of like pressure on the graveyard in his build. So bringing in Graveyard Hate isn't really super effective versus this deck. So it's kind of a free roll.
Right. And I guess like in a outside case, you get to blink snap with Felia as long as you're casting an instant. It's if you need to get a Swords or a Brainstorm or something, that's just worth it. I can't imagine Stifle being helpful in that scenario or any of the counter spells. But hey, you know what? Maybe you got a Teferi Time Raveler and you've plussed, and maybe you can cast a Ponder.
Yeah, the resurgence of the 2 mana, 2 powered creatures being strong. So.
Yep. Looking at the sideboard, I don't see anything particularly spicy. I mean, again, 3 consigns.
3 consign. Yeah, you called it. Yeah, people and Force Negation. I mean, those are also really good into those kind of Karn, type of decks. So definitely, I think that's a good call that you notice here is people. There were a decent number of those decks here. They aren't necessarily highly represented. You won't see them in the top 8, but they are something that people need to respect. This is a very powerful and consistent deck. So
absolutely. All right, let's look outside the top 8 and let's go. Our 2 winners, and let's look at Matt's deck, who is the qualifier, Affinity Stompy.
Congratulations, Matt.
Yeah, and this looks pretty standard, I think, as far as I can tell.
So he's got the tried and true, force backup to a kind of a Stompy plan with some, with some interaction here. So, it just because there's nothing too crazy, spicy, or new. This is a deck that I haven't seen a lot of recently. I think it feels like it sort of died down. So, maybe he benefited a little bit from being a good pilot into some people that weren't exactly tuned for this exact list. Although I will say, like, there's probably a lot of kind of like fallout hate on this type of deck just because of all the Cam Willer type things that I would imagine a lot of the hate kind of similarly fits. But yeah, it's interesting to see this list in the top 8, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking of that Cam Willer hate, if you're bringing in like No Rod in particular, look at how rough this deck is to No Rod. They have exactly one source. No, sorry, they have sinks. Okay, sorry, they have 5 sources of blue that are not artifacts, but even then, that's
Yeah,
rough.
really kind
The
of
one Volk,
crushes
by
their
the way.
ability to be explosive.
Yeah, I love the one Volk as a way to hardcast Pinnacle Emissary. That's really funny to me.
Yeah.
That's really good. And then looking at the sideboard, hello once again, Harbinger of the Seas, 4 Force of Negation, and 4 Disruptor Flute. We are not losing to combo here, folks.
Yep. And a Shadow Spear for some of the kind of, stompy
Yep.
or tempo type decks. So, yeah.
Type of Cannoneer hits you for 7, gain 7. I think the
Ooh,
game's over there, folks.
4 Disruptor Flute. I don't know if I've ever seen
No,
that in this.
I'm not
That's
sure I own 4 Disruptor Flute. I don't think.
yeah.
I don't think that's one of the cards I look at and go, I'm never going to play 4 of these. Why do I need to buy them?
4 Disruptor Flute and 1 Pithing Needle when you really want to turn off those activateds.
I mean, that one gets you can get that one off Saga, so that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah. No, it's great. I mean, it's a tough card to play as well, because you do need to sort of like, kind of think about what they're going to play, kind of mapping out your next turns. What am I going to lose to? Know the other decks pretty well. So that might be one of the reasons why I've never played 4. I'm just scared to misplay them, But clearly he did well with it and he got the invite.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. And there's those 2 Tormod scripts. Will they be trimmed in the coming days, weeks, and months?
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out. All right, what else we got? And there's our dearly departed right there on Oops All Spells.
There it is.
Yep,
yeah.
there it is. So
let's have one last zoom in on our departing friend here.
Yep, there they are.
There you are. We hardly knew ye. I'm not a super, kind of sort of this. Let's look at the. I do see, yeah. They have the green with the spirit guide. Churning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lively Dirge. That was one of the ones we mentioned earlier to watch out for uptick in the count. Let's see what else we have here. Yep, so there's 4 Force of Vigor.
Yep, there's that sideboard.
Foundation Breaker. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leyline. So yeah, they don't have a big pivot or anything in the sideboard.
No.
They're just like, hey, we're gonna force our way and jam it.
Which, I mean, that works for them. The Dirge and the Reanimate, still there. We're gonna see what happens with those. It's gonna be interesting. Yeah.
And solid list. I mean, this is the power of it, though, is like you just see a lot of 4-ofs, like a lot of just like consistency, and I think that's what it's going to lose going forward, right? That you're talking about, Ryan.
I absolutely agree. And, we're just gonna see what happens here, how long it ends up going away, and yeah, we'll just see what happens. All right, moving into the rest of the top 8. Do we have anyone else we want to look at? Oh, there we go. And good old Demir Tempo. And hey, remember how I said I lost in round 4 to someone who ended up making top 8? There they are.
Yeah. Wiley's he's a great player.
He's great.
He's got a lot ahead of him. I kind of called this in my notes here the boring Demir Tempo. It's there's not a lot that anyone hasn't seen out of this deck, but I think there's a reason for that. It's really good consistency. One thing I did want to zoom in on a little bit is in the early weeks of sort of the flow state, like new meta, people were jamming 4 flow states. They were trying to get an additional copy by adding Mystic Sanctuary, things like that. It looks like now we're back to 3 and 1 Kaito. I really like the Kaito. I think, especially in the mirror, it's a really hard to answer. You don't have a Red Blast. A lot of the kind of controlling decks will struggle to answer this while it's sort of chipping away 3 or 4 damage at a time, tapping down your threats, drawing cards, surveilling things to the yard to get your different types in there. I mean, I think it does a lot. So I like that he's brought one back, and at the cost of a flow state. The first flow state, as anyone that's sort of played the card, can be a little bit tough to turn on. So when you have like 2 or 3 of them in your hand, it can get awkward, and you can actually be kind of run over by some of these other tempo or fast decks or even these combo decks, when you're just, because you're only looking 3 cards deep. So it can be a big ask to sorcery speed tap out on your turn like that. So I like where this is going, and we'll see. I think this is going to be one of the places I'd look for the deck list to change even more. So they might go back to like 2 Kaito or something now if they feel like it's slowing down. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think other thing I want to highlight, for the creature count, we've got 2 Barrogoyf and 1 Murktide region. We've dropped down to 1 Murktide region.
Interesting, yeah.
And this is main, and we were discussing, I know I was certainly discussing when this deck, when Flow State came out, I was saying we might have to cut Murktide region entirely, and I still think we might have to, just because of how bad it plays with Flow State. So
yeah,
it's good. It's interesting to see that progressing, and Barrogoyf's just such a house anyway. Like, do you even need the Murktide region at that point? It's
like the opposite. Yeah, it's like that's filling up your graveyard when Murktide's eating it. Although I do, with card draw, it's a little bit of it's a push and pull, right? With something like Flow State, I mean, the difference between 2 and 3 mana becomes exacerbated when you are drawing a lot of cards and tapping out sorcery speed. So sometimes I do like having that 2 mana option versus the 3 mana Barrogoyf when you have to wait an entire turn cycle to play your threat after drawing, versus when you could just draw it, and drop it right away. 1 might be the correct number, 2 might be the correct number. Maybe we get to a place where 0 is the correct number, but it is something that I've noticed in playing some of these decks, that having a bunch of card draw and then having some your threats be 3 mana in the case of Barrogoyf, has at times gotten a little bit awkward.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And looking at the sideboard, once again, 4 consigned to memory, 3 force negation. We know it's coming, and at least for those, we're not going to have to change those numbers coming up soon. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great card. It has a ton of flexibility, and as we've seen so far, the people that were packing 3+ of them seem to have been doing pretty well this tournament.
Right. And then one last thing I want to bring attention to. Let's look at Toxic Deluge for a second. Card definitely seeing a resurgence.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild to see.
I'm as you and I were saying, like there might maybe this will move up in numbers as well as the meta shifts. Even if those if my theory of the sort of slightly slower non-blue aggro decks pick up in numbers, the only really good way to combat that is with board wipes, because the Dimir deck cannot answer those 1 for 1. They don't have enough like 1 mana removal spells to be as efficient. A lot of times you get like the Cats decks, and they play a 1 or 2 mana spell. It makes 2 or 3 tokens. By the time you untap and answer it, they're already way ahead of you. So you have to kind of find a way to come back. Toxic Deluge is a really I think interesting and kind of a balanced card, because you do have to pay life as a resource for this. So it remains to be seen even how many you can put in against an aggro deck if that's what you're going for. So but it's a cool good catch, right?
Yep. Well, it'll be interesting to see if we end up staying with the Deluge, or if we end up going to something like a Deluge and Massacre combination, because Massacre still has that effect. But doesn't cost the life. But maybe at the same time, the flexibility is worth it. But 0 mana.
Yeah, it depends which are the aggro decks. If it's the white ones, that is the best board wipe that we have.
No question. All right, so let's go on to our next deck. We've got looks like Alex's deck, and this is an Everwelder Cam deck.
Yeah. So this one he has opted for 4 Kappa Cannoneer, I
Yep.
noticed. That
No
is
engineer.
sorry, go ahead.
No engineer either.
No engineer, yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
which is I feel like we saw in one of the builds there's 3 engineers and the other one there's 4 in Harry's build. I know Harry is really high on the card. I've talked to him about that. It's a way to really kind of like jumpstart your combo. And in itself it can be a threat. I mean, you have to pay mana
Yep.
to get things out, but it can be a real scary card.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting take on this. I think you also notice that he's got 4 Force of Will in here. So I think it's a
Yep.
potent combo to have 4 Kappa Cannoneer and 4 Force of Will. So
Mm-hmm.
you're sort of like backup plan being dropping a big you can't touch this creature because it has ward 4, unblockable most turns, with
Right.
the first time you do try to make me sacrifice it or do whatever you can to try to get rid of it, I force your spell. That's pretty
Mm-hmm.
much game over right there. So it's a different take. I saw Harry had moved from at least like 1 to 2 of these in his main board to 0 now. So he sort of moved the other way. It seems like kind of focusing a little bit more on the combo. This seems to me a little bit more of like you've got sort of 2 different combos. Kappa Cannoneer being your quote unquote sort of like fair combo. And then it'd be interesting to see, I'd love to talk to Alexander about the how he feels about the Force of Will. I know there's a lot of talk in Reddit and Discord and
Right. Right.
in the community when the welder, or sorry, the cam came out, because it's a blue card that
Mm-hmm.
maybe people would be having a high enough of a blue count to support Force of Will. So between the Sink and Stupor that he's got here, Kappa Cannoneer, it looks like he has a relatively healthy blue count to support that.
I absolutely agree. And then look at the lands again.
Mm-hmm.
With Harry's deck in particular, we saw a pretty resilient mana base for like no run things. We saw a decent number of lands, but in this deck we've got
Mm-hmm.
we've got 2 Great Furnace, 4 seats. By the way, seats
Yeah.
we had saw none in Harry's deck, and then 4 Volks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously we're just on a pretty different approach to this deck, particularly in the mana base. This is more like a
Mm-hmm.
true combo blue red deck as opposed to Harry's deck, which was definitely just red. That
Yes.
happened to have, just red. That happened to have blue cards.
Yeah, they share a lot of cards, but I would imagine piloting these 2 decks is probably quite a different experience.
Yeah,
To the kind of untrained eye like myself, it might be hard to catch all the nuances that they, I'm sure, understand and have to
right.
keep in mind as they're going through and piloting this through a high level tournament like this. This is you have like much different starts, like the hands that you're looking to keep, the decks that you're worried about, and as a result, the different sideboard plans as well.
Yeah, I think it's this is why we're talking about their list, not our list from this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then just turning to the sideboard, only 2 consign this time, but at the same
Yep.
time, 2 Harbinger.
Mm-hmm.
That card's obviously making a resurgence. Do we think that's the way to go if you want to combat the Tron deck, or do you think it should be consigns?
So I think my by looking at this, I think Force of Will kind of makes it so you don't need 4 consign. You do have a lot of those kind of like the first set or second ish threat from out of those decks handled with your Force of Will. So I could see you wanting to branch out into some of those more powerful options like Harbinger of the Seas that can shut down stuff. I did see not at the top tables, maybe because of these Harbingers here, but I did see several 4-color decks that were playing four kind of like 4 and 5-color bean decks.
Right.
So that's a card that they're really going to struggle against. And it's one of those things where if you haven't seen Harbinger of the Seas in a while and it's not really at the top of your mind, even if you're not a particularly greedy mana base, you can kind of get got by it, game 2 if you're just sort of, get a little bit lazy with how you fetch.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see, both of these decks evolve, and let's see if Alex and Harry end up converging on something, or if they just go in these
Hmm.
diverting timelines.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got a deck that I think can only call a meta call for the day. The return of Mono Black Helm.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
haven't seen this deck in a while, quick rundown. You've got 4 Leyline of the Void, you've got 4 Doughty Voidwalker, and you have this little card called Helm of Obedience, which just for 4 mana, you activate it, and your opponent mills until I think they hit a creature, is the exact phrasing. Well, guess what? They're milling, and they're not hitting a creature because they line in Dauthi are sending them to exile, so they mill out their
Yep.
deck, and they lose. And
Mill out the
that's how
whole
this deck
thing.
works. It's been a
Yep.
while since I've seen this deck, but I was talking to this player, and just looking at it, this is such a smart metagame call for right now. That I just really, really like it. You've got a fantastic matchup against any of the flow state decks that are relying on that graveyard, because they're probably not going to have a graveyard. You have a fantastic matchup as well against Demir Tempo in particular, because again they don't have a graveyard, so their Neverglyphs are O1s at best.
Hmm.
And they're just dead otherwise. And then just top it all off, you have 4 Barrowglyphs.
Yeah.
Because that's a card that we can very easily defeat in the tempo decks, particularly blue-red tempo decks, as I can attest from the weekend.
Yeah.
And you get to power them out fast with Dark Ritual. You got the One Ring, and of course, once again, oops, never point of evidence on our friend Oops. There's a really bad matchup when your opponent has 4 main deck Leyline of the Voids and you're on Oops all
Oh
spells.
yeah.
That's brutal. Now, that being said, notably, this player lost in top 8 to Oops all spells.
Wow.
So not a foolproof strategy. I don't know. Jason? What do you looking at this deck? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really cool bit of tech here. I haven't seen one of these decks in probably a year or so, I would say, but I have had the pleasure of playing against them. It's a really cool idea. People can approach it a little bit differently, but usually there is some aspect of stompiness. I have tended to see Bowmasters be the thing. Bowman
Yep.
Masters is very anemic against a lot of decks, but it can be very, very powerful against blue decks, and even holds its weight against some of the creature decks that rely on small creatures or elves and things like
Right.
that. The Baraglyph surprised me a little bit. You're throwing a lot of different card types in your own graveyard, but when you're exiling the opponent's graveyard, that's kind of like your main plan. I was like a little bit surprised to see them going with 4, but it is a very powerful card. Death
Yep.
Touch, Lifelink. You're again, like, you probably are usually almost always having at least like 3 types in your graveyard. Artifact being a hard one to get from a lot of different decks, but you're throwing you're throwing things in left and right here. So it's a cool deck, and it would be, I think, relatively hard to combat from a lot of different decks. So again, I think it might be one of those decks that I think we're going back to, where you're benefiting from not being real popular, and maybe people don't know exactly how to play against it. I mean, how would you try to approach attacking this if you're a control deck? You
Right.
can't just rely only on your removal. You might need to bring in some other things. So then you get caught in the spot where you get hit by the combo when you have all your removal in hand, or you just get killed by a Baraglyph beating you down when you have all your pithing needle type stuff out. So
Yep. And then I want to also bring attention to the 3 Karn the Great Creator. You can look at the sideboard, you see the Karn board, but in particular, if you just are looking at this deck and you're looking at the top 8 metagame today, we had 3 Is It Welder Cam decks, and with exception to Alex's deck, you're gonna have a really hard time beating this deck if you're Is It Welder Cam. I mean, the ley
yeah,
lines, the Karns, the Douthies. I'm not entirely sure that
Disruptor
Is It
Flute
Welder
makes
Cam.
another appearance as
Oh
well.
yeah, yep, very good. Disruptor Flute. I'm not actually sure. Looking at those 2 lists, I don't think either of them that aren't the Alex deck has a way of removing a Leyline of the Void once it's on the field in game 1, because the
Yeah,
Haywires are in the board. I think they're just stoned to Leyline in game 1.
yeah,
So
yeah.
really good stuff there.
Yeah, you have to try to get your construct beats or something like that. Go
Yeah,
with game plan 2 or 3. So yeah,
right.
this
And
this
then
can just really sort of surprise people out of the blue. I noticed here in the card board a Vault of Whispers. It's
there you go.
very when you just need that fifth land.
Yeah.
It's maybe drop like a duress the same turn or something like that. So it's a bit of neat tech. I haven't really seen the artifact lands often in the Karn sideboards, but it's pretty cool.
It's definitely been a while. But yeah, I remember this deck needing that because you have 4 tombs, you have 3 cities, and you have 4 wastelands in this particular version. So a lot of colorless mana. Sometimes you just need to be able to get black mana to get your deck
Yep.
online. And there's those Bowmasters we were talking about. There's 2 Bowmasters in the sideboard. Those 2, 1 Duress and 2 Long Goodbye, I think are the only non-card board cards in there. I mean, obviously you'd side in some flutes because you have 3 of them, but in terms of
Yeah.
actual non-artifacts, that's it. And I think those tell a lot of what we need here.
I love seeing a liquid metal coating. It brings me back to my evil modern Tron days. I don't see a lot of the Karn boards, they don't make room for it, but I think it's a really powerful option. So kind of interesting to see that here.
Oh, actually, speaking of cards they didn't make room for, I don't think there's a Mycosynth Gladys in here, right? No, there isn't.
No, yeah, they don't go big enough. They're not really,
No.
they're not really having like big mana.
No,
Maybe.
I mean they've got Karns, but you still with 3 Karns. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at our last deck of a top 8. We've been alluding to it this entire time. It's our third Is It Welder Cam deck. Now I will say, Harry and James. Is this James or Kemper?
Kemper.
It's a Kemper, yeah. All of them work very closely together. I know they've worked on these together, so I imagine this is going to be very similar, or a couple of changes to Harry's list. And just quickly looking at it, that looks exactly what we got. So definitely some consistency going on there.
Yeah, a lot of similarities. Here he has the Corey Steel card. That's the card I was thinking of from Harry's deck. That Harry kind of had that as like a sort of a secondary option that I've been beaten down with a bunch of little, monks coming at me. But this is an interesting plan. He's got. I also noted he's got a little bit more of a sort of tutoring suite here. He's got a Tormod's Crypt in the main and a Pithing Needle, which as we've kind of been saying, that card can come in handy for a lot of the activated abilities that we've seen, especially in this top 8. He's only down to 3 Goblin Engineer, so a little bit harder to tutor for some of that stuff. But it seems like he's opted ever so slightly to go a little bit less in the full combo and have some options to just sort of beat you down with monks and constructs and things like that.
It's interesting to see Corey Steelcutter in this deck, and particularly in its evolution, since I think Mason Bonadonna, that was about 3 BCQs ago at Paradise, introduced that concept and won the event with it. So it's nice.
I saw you playing that, Ryan.
I did. That's because Mason messaged me. It was like, "Hey, build this for me," and I was like, "Yeah. You got it."
You were swinging some very large and very many monk tokens at me, if I recall correctly.
Yes. And then I played Mason in round 2, and in the mirror he said, "Oh, good, I'll buy," and absolutely demolished me.
Yeah.
Big.
So it goes back to, I mean, like, if I were to tell you, Ryan, like, you are playing against Cam Welder, do you think you know what to expect?
We see 3 clear different versions that are on 3 completely different axes. Like, obviously, they all have Welder, they all have Cam, but guess what? What's their backup plan? That's up to the coin to decide, it seems.
Yeah. Interesting with like a closed deckless tournament. So cool to see these and cool to compare. This is a fun top 8 to analyze.
Absolutely. And just one last thing to look at the sideboard. Once again, 3 consigns, and then 3 Light of the Void. I'm thinking those might get trimmed after this weekend.
Yeah, that was the thing. I had a few notes at the top. Like I think even if folks don't fully just disrespect graveyard hate, because I don't think you can do that in Legacy. It's too much of a resource. But I think the way that people go about targeting the graveyard might change.
Yep.
There's things like like single card removal spells like Unlicensed Hearse and things like that.
Mhm.
That is not good into something like Oops. It's just too
Right.
slow. Turn 2, you tap out, then you can get 2 cards.
Mhm.
That's not enough. But it's really good against those kind of tempo fair decks to keep them off of certain card types for Varigoyfs, or to keep a sorcery out of the yard for a flow state, and just kind of consistently eating away at the graveyard. So things like that you might see making a little bit more of a comeback. And then the kind of all in, just like this card is either really good or really bad type of cards, like those ley lines that are like garbage when you draw them on turn
Right.
3, but amazing in if you're like a non-blue deck and you just need some like turn 0 interaction for these types of decks. I think you're going to see probably less ley line type of hate cards and maybe more Ghost Vacuums and stuff.
Yeah, Ghost Vacuum. As Ghost Vacuum, we've been seeing a little bit of uptick online, so this might really explode that uptick. All right, well, that's our BCQ from Dice City. I have great event. What do we have? We have our next BCQ this Saturday.
Coming soon.
Yeah, at Game Haven, which is its first. That's our first BCQ of the season at Game Haven, a premium Beltway Cup qualifier. That means 2 invites, 1 for first, 1 for second. If you haven't gotten out to Game Haven, be sure to head on down. I will be your head judge, so you will know that at least if you get a ruling, it will be from me, which means you can mock me mercilessly online and take it seriously. That's all it means, by the way.
Yeah, get those signups. I don't know what their sort of seating capacity is and things like that, but I know that there was a few people on the wait list for this past weekend at BCQ. So
Game Haven, fortunately, a very large store, plenty of space for that. So be sure to come on down. Now, that being said, if you want to pre-registration is available, and you can sign up today on Game Haven's website. And if you want to see the rest of the season and you want to see this calendar right here, that's dmblegacyleague.com. So make your planning easier. Now, speaking of DMV Legacy League, what else do we have coming up? We have the DMV Super League. That has been our product. That his first event. We saw Dan McKelvey triumphantly beating Ben Holt on Blue Black Bounce.
Yeah,
because that is a regular thing.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I caught that the day that it released. I was excited to watch. Yeah, the production value is really awesome. So congratulations to all those folks that worked on that. Dan's deck was really fun. Super interesting list. I bought an Estrid's Invocation because I didn't know it existed.
Right.
After that, for one of my commander decks. So yeah, it's a really cool deck. Everyone should definitely check that out if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely. And that's what's available on our YouTube, DMV Legacy League. Now, coming up this week, we have another one by Mr. Harry Hackett versus Jason.
Yeah, yours truly. Yeah, Harry, it's Harry's the #1 seed. And I squeaked in, last place in there. So definitely the underdog, but yeah, won't give anything away, but I think I put up an okay fight.
And you're going to see that this week premiering on our YouTube channel. And don't go anywhere on that because we have done a lot of recording in the last couple of days, and we have a lot of great matches to show you. Those are going to be on about a weekly cadence, maybe even a little bit more. That's once again YouTube, DMV Legacy League. All right. Well, Jason, we're coming near to the end of the episode. What else do you want to say? Do you have any last things you want to throw out there? Any grand thoughts about Oops as it goes into its new saga, or shall we truly say goodbye?
Yeah, I'm just hoping to log on, get in a league or two before people figure out the next new build, and just bring no sideboard hate. Just go in there raw. Don't care. Just gonna optimize for something else. We'll see. Maybe I'll get through it. We'll see.
If you live in the DMV area, you're going to notice at some point a report on the news of a laptop going through the window. That's because Jason did that league and paired into 5 reanimator decks. It's coming soon.
Yeah, they'll be queuing up right against me.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, that's doing it for this episode of the Beltway Report. Once again, where thank you, Jason, for joining us today. Be sure to check out our schedule of BCQs once again this Saturday, the 23rd at Game Haven. And as we go through, I want to thank our stores that have been our sponsors. Quick shout out to our bronze stores in hashtag Gaming Arena and Labyrinth Puzzles and Games. And of course, our gold stores, Curio Cavern, Dice City Games, Game Haven, Level Up Games, and Paradise Games and Gifts. We could not do this without your support, and we really appreciate you. That's all the time we have today on the Beltway Report. And, oh, yep, CubeCon has appeared on my screen because I, of course, was about to sign off without it. CubeCon DMB, July 11th and 12th. How could I have forgot? It's been dominating most of my weekends. You've got fantastic events shown. You've got, of course, the Classic, the DMV Legacy League's big open event for the season. You've got Pauper Genesis, the biggest Pauper event in North America, sold out as of right now, but be sure to keep your eye out in case additional spots by refunds reappear. And, of course, in case you've always wanted to go, but the middle of the country is not somewhere you've been able to get to, CubeCon on the East Coast for the first time. CubeCon DMV. All three of these events will be available that weekend. It's July 11th and 12th. And if you can't show up, don't worry. We'll have coverage from both the Classic and Pauper Genesis going the entire weekend. And you can get in on the action too. Yes, you. By doing some competitive fundraising. All three of the organizations will be raising money for the charity of their choice. You can choose which charity you want to support, and you can make sure the DMV Legacy League wins. We're supporting the World Central Kitchen this year, and we're very excited to figure out who's going to have the competition crown, which I'm told is a sweet hat, but it doesn't matter as long as everyone makes some money. All right. That's going to do it for the DMV Legacy League and the DMV Beltway Report. I'm Ryan Freeberger. This has been Jason Hoffman. We're going to say goodnight and thank you for tuning in.